this is a convention of states. And the nature of a convention of states is one state, one vote. It's like international law, in a sense, because it's a meeting of sovereign entities. Sovereign entities, when they meet under the UN or any other basis, NATO, any other basis, it's always one state, one vote. And in international law, nations are called states. One state, one vote. And that's the nature of a convention of states. There is no other possibility of how it can be organized. People like to point to a recent article by the Congressional Research Service that says that Congress thinks that it has a lot of authority in this area. Well, what's the evidence in this Congressional Research Service article is that 41 bills have been filed in the history of Congress where they purported to try to regulate this process. Well, the only thing that's in common of all 41 of those bills is all of them have failed. And anyone that thinks that failed bills create a legislative precedent needs to go back to law school. In fact, the Supreme Court of the United States in Youngstown Sheehan 2 versus Sawyer considered a failed bill in the Taft-Hartley Act and the legal effect of that. And the Supreme Court in that instance said this proves that Congress rejected the idea that the president should have the power to seize the steel mills. So a failed bill, if it creates a precedent at all, normally we would think it does creates no precedent one way or the other. But if it creates a precedent at all, it would create the precedent that the opposite of what the bill purported to accomplish. So 41 failed bills in Congress, if it creates a precedent at all, creates this precedent. Congress has a dramatic history of rejecting the idea that it can control this process. And so the people that argue that, people will say, well, under the necessary and proper clause, Congress can do just about anything. No, they can't. A 1798 case decided by the Supreme Court on this topic rejected the idea that ordinary legislative authority is grounds for Article 5 action. Article 5 is contained by Article 5. And that case, that application, that 1798 case was used in a case I litigated about the Equal Rights Amendment in the late 1970s. And in that case, the court held Article 1 power cannot be used in the Article 5 process. The necessary and proper clause is contained in Article 1. The president has to sign legislation under Article 1, and everyone should know the president has no role in Article 5. And so the idea that the necessary and proper clause is usable here is done by people who have not done the research accurately or like Congressional Research Service. If those people wrote what they wrote in that thing in a constitutional law exam that I was grading, they'd flunk. And so, I would suggest they go read Youngstown Sheehan 2 versus Sawyer and rethink their position.